Okay, so I'm back again with the root over rock spruce, and this is going to be a voiceover video because I thought I was going to include these clips in the previous video, but it ended up being kind of long, so I figured I'm just going to make a video only about the styling aspect of this tree. So, first and foremost, what kind of style do I want to get this tree into? And the style that I've decided is what I call the Alpine style, which kind of makes sense, at least in my mind, because this is going to be a root over rock spruce. So I want to style it after trees that grow high up in the mountains. Usually there's a high snow load, which weighs those branches down. So we're going to have a very triangular, very narrow columnar type of tree. So what I'm going to end up doing is cutting off a lot of the bottom branches, and I originally thought I was going to keep more of the bottom branches, but then, once it's on the rock, once it's kind of getting into position, I realized, I'm actually going to cut a lot of those off, but I will leave stubs to turn into deadwood features, nothing too crazy, and now that I think about it, I wonder if it would have made sense to leave kind of like a longer branch that's forking out to kind of have a deadwood branch on this tree, but hindsight is 2020, so I won't really know what it would have looked like if that branch was left on there, but it doesn't really matter because I think the final style turned out okay anyways. So for right now, I bought a bunch of wire, and I think it came from Superfly Bonsai Supply, and I'll leave a link down below. I think some other wire came from the Bonsai Supply off their Amazon store. I just bought a bunch of different sizes of wire. And it ended up being kind of not enough. Well, it's enough for the tree, but just kind of not enough in terms of I want to get like a big bulk supply for all of my trees, not just for one tree. So I'm just measuring the wires up to size here, and I picked copper wire, which kind of ended up being a little bit softer than I imagined, although I've been using aluminum wire in the past, and I feel like that's even softer. So I guess I just kind of misjudged the thickness here, and I ended up having to double up on the wire for some branches to keep them in place, which isn't really a huge deal. I've seen that done, and I just make sure that the wires are right next to each other to not cause any issues, but it was kind of like I had to go back and rewire this tree. So yeah, not a whole lot I can say. This is not like a tutorial, because I didn't really get any up-close shots. I guess mainly the point of this video is to just kind of show the process that I did to get the picture in my mind into this tree and kind of, get the basic framework. And I figured it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to show in-depth wiring on this tree because the branches, as you can see, are kind of sparse. There really isn't a whole lot of ramification there to do, what I would call secondary wiring. Basically, the majority of what I'm doing here today is cutting off the branches I don't need, wiring the main section of branch into the position that I want, and then this year we're going to grow it out. I'm going to keep some of the tips chopped back because I want more ramification towards the center of the tree. We're going to let that extend a little bit, and then next year we'll probably do some fine wiring on the ramification. It's just that right now there isn't enough ramification, at least in my opinion, to do any kind of secondary wiring in any kind of degree that would be reasonable, because I would just have to end up doing it, more of it later on. So here we have what is known as a bar branch, and I just cut it off. I left a stub on the other side, and I don't know if I want to keep that because, yeah, it's turned into a deadwood feature, so there's technically not a branch there, but it's just kind of visually, off to have just this horizontal line there. Almost looks like the branch starts, off of the tree and goes around it or something like that. I don't know, but that's all right because we can always cut the deadwood off later. The main important thing was to pick the branch, which was the best one here. And even though it's close to the rock, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to wire that more vertically later on, and I just kind of like that branch more than the other one. And I don't even really remember my reasoning for this. I think I was honestly just drunk, not, blackout drunk, but you can see I've had a few of those Cayman Jack, not bottles, but cans. So when I was styling this tree, I was feeling pretty good. I didn't really care, am I going to cut this branch off? Am I going to cut that branch off? You know what? I don't know. I have a vision in my head, and I'm just going to go with it. And then once we get the secondary ramification, it will look much better. And I just kind of took a leap of faith and said, you know what? It's fine. So I picked that branch for some reason that is going to remain unknown, because I have forgotten what my reasoning really was. It just seemed like, that feels right. I didn't really use a lot of technical, ideas for styling this tree. It was all pretty much an artistic venture of, yeah, I see that branch looks pretty good over here. That one's going to look good there. And I kind of just staggered my way up the tree. Once you pick that first branch, you kind of have to go to the opposite side for the second branch, so everything else kind of fell into place. So here you can see we're getting closer to my idea where the branches are more vertical. And when I went back to take a look at this tree, I realized, you know what, even that's not enough. I really want to push these branches to be super, super vertical against the trunk to really get that thin, narrow alpine style. And it will be, helpful for this tree because we do have a thin trunk, and I could always grow it out and thicken the trunk more. However, for the size of the rock, I don't think we need to. It would start throwing everything out of balance if I, doubled or tripled the thickness of this trunk. So it's okay. For the style that I'm doing, by bringing those branches more close to the trunk and having this narrow pyramid, it's going to look aesthetically pleasing, at least in my opinion, once it's ramified and styled a little bit more over like the next 5 years. So I'm just cutting off, some of the extra branches and doing the dead wood by just peeling the bark off with a knife and some pliers. And I'll go back and lime sulfur that later on. And I think I'll even, sharpen some of the tips. But we're pretty much done here. And like I said earlier, I want to really compress these branches closer to the trunk. So what I end up doing is getting some more wire and just bending these even closer. Like I really, really want to push this to be a very narrow alpine tree, or at least, in my mind, when I visualize an alpine tree somewhere high up in the mountains, this is the picture that comes to mind. So I'm almost done with this tree, and it was styled with the branches getting pushed towards the trunk, very vertical slope. And I've seen a number of people, they wire their trees with the branches kind of horizontal, and and stuff like a maple, that makes sense. It's just I've seen it for a while, and I kind of just wanted to show this as a different option. And I don't really want to sound like I'm some expert here coming to show you, oh, this is how bonsai tree styling is done. It's just an idea that I wanted to share because I saw a very similar, what I call alpine narrow columnar evergreen tree. I think it may have even been a larch at one of the Midwest bonsai show and sales a number of years ago. So I just wanted to style one of my trees after that and kind of get the style out there. If somebody's not aware, maybe they can try pushing the limits of their branches on their conifers, kind of do a similar style. But yeah, that's kind of the main point of my channel, right? Just kind of sharing what I enjoy, what I like. So here is my root over rock spruce, styled in an alpine style, getting close to that picture I have in my head. And this just happens to be a style that I really like. So I'm probably going to do maybe 1 or 2 more conifers with a very narrow columnar shape. I think I'm going to try it with a larch. But that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be back in the next one.